do understand that we are imagining right now a transformed learning future. And we have tensions within the ICSEI community around effectiveness, improvement, innovation, transformation. And we've been battling with that over many years. We know we're right in the middle of it. Yeah? And as you said, the theme of this year's ICSEI around sustainability and, quite frankly, ecology really brings that front and centre. But then you go on and talk about the importance of e-leadership and the nature of that leadership within an ecosystem, to use that kind of language many of us are. I just want to ask you this question to begin with and get that response as others come in. Given that more people are talking about an ecosystem for learning, and that they do understand that's going to require leadership of a different kind, and particularly e-leadership, because unless we harness technology, there's no chance of us being able to have the kind of deep learning that you talk about, even, if you like, code, character that you've raised. And we know we're going to be in online communities. Why is it, do you think, that more of us are not talking about your major thesis? I'm saying to you, I hear a lot about ecosystems, I hear a lot about leadership and even potentially e-leadership. But the business about making the human central and thinking about the nature of leadership that's going to be required to respond to that complexity and ambiguity, you say there's an enormous amount of work being done. But I'd say in mainstream debate and discourse around schooling at the moment, even though the other three keynote presentations have all raised this, I haven't heard it in quite the way that you have discussed. Why do we need this fifth age? Why are we not already there?
Well, I think it's partly about us being in an exceptionally difficult and challenging environment as I see it. And when I say that there is very good work going on around the world, actually there is, but it's often very quiet. It's situated, it's local, it's not necessarily shared, it's not necessarily understood, and not even always understood even in the same organisation actually, in terms of people knowing what each other's practices are. And so I think there is a need for a shared, actually much wider agenda on this. I think there is a need for a shared sense of e-leadership. Now there is, and I acknowledge the work of the World Bank, of UNESCO, of the WISE Committee, of many others, of ALT in terms of Association for Learning Technology, of JISC, of many, many communities of practice who are working together, many experts in this field, a fantastic work. But what I think is that we are not necessarily enabling that dialogue around e-leadership to be central. We have not, and I've been struggling this work myself, so please colleagues, if you think that there's something that I have missed that is important here that we need to share, please say, because I think I was astounded by the gap when we put out the call. We put out the call, well, actually several times, to many expert communities inviting papers in this area. And there's a number of people around the world who are specialists in it, and I ended up inviting specific expert papers. Alma's was amongst those, because we just didn't get the responses. By which I mean that I think the communities do not necessarily work together always, that work on notions of leadership and work notions of e-learning. The communities do not necessarily engage together, or when they do, it is really complex and it is not necessarily in a shared debate. So in bringing those two thoughts together and acknowledging the work, for example, of Alma, I think that it is very, very important that experts in different fields learn from each other. In other words, what I think is we're reaching a rapidly changing environment, colleagues, in which I think we need to be helping each other to learn from different areas, because the challenges which are upon us globally in terms of the growth of social media, I don't think anybody knows anybody know what is going on with the growth in social media, the growth of rapid mobile technology? Have we grasped it? I do apologize if I have exceptional ignorance in this area, but I think that it is a very difficult, complex agenda, and that is partly why it's about the management of uncertainty and risk.
Let me invite people to come in. Indicate if you are wanting to contribute. Can I encourage you to just identify yourselves, and perhaps, given that this is a shared leadership agenda, distributed in the way that you talk about, if you can say whether you're coming from the perspective of a practitioner, a school leader, a person working daily with young people, or a researcher, or those who are actually in the business of thinking about enabling policy to support the kind of e-leadership that you are advocating, Jill. That would be helpful. So, colleagues, give us an indication. I've got one right at the back on the left-hand side, so I get a microphone there, right at the back. Yep, thank you. Just wave to me, right there, on your right-hand side. Person right next to you, at the back. Okay? I think, is that you, Paul? Paul, wave your hand so that people can see you. I'm going to start with Paul, and then I'm coming down to the front and across to the centre. Okay, so 1, 2, 3.
Hello?
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I'm going to have to do my usual thing of saying something. Okay, I'm
Just introduce yourself.
Oh, sorry, Paul Clark. I work in a social enterprise program internationally, and what we do is we use technology. We talk to each other using technology. We're increasingly interested in game technology and gaming. You'll notice on one of the slides, gaming is at the top. Now, I would argue that gaming is probably one of the most interesting educational initiatives on the planet at the moment, because we are looking every day at something in the region of 40 million people playing things like Warcraft, for God's sake. Now, what's interesting in those games is that there are numerous cooperative activities taking place, and there are a number of folks like myself starting to look at them as potentially sites whereby we can experiment with reality in a different sort of way. It provides an open space to experiment with things which perhaps in the real world are tricky. We can model them in the virtual and look at the ways in which crowds of people, way more than we'd ever get in a room like this, start to resolve an issue like a drought scenario, for example, or a crisis of one type or another, and then take that data and bring it back into conversations about the application in real environments. Now, we've been looking at that particularly for things like the Haiti crisis a couple of years ago, and some of the modelling that went on as a consequence of an initiative that the UN ran at the time was extremely helpful for the practical interventions that then took place. And the fact that they were haywire is another matter, but the knowledge that it created was extremely interesting. And I'm very concerned about this idea that at this point in the first generation really of in effect a utility which is effectively global, and I recognise exactly what you're saying about some communities not having access to our work on them. But I'm very concerned that we're already talking about regulation, closing down, and actually wanting to put our old world model of leadership and framing onto this environment, because we simply don't know yet what potential outcomes are going to come from it. And there will inevitably be good stuff and bad stuff, and the law of unintended consequences will play its part. The point is that we've got to play the time well and just trust the space and the intelligence of us as a crowd to start to use that information differently. So I just wanted to throw that in because it's something that I think is absolutely vital to the future of humanity if we're going to resolve some of the major challenges that we face.
Thank you, Paul. I've got a microphone right down the front here. Thank you. Just so wave to me. And then a third one. Well, there's two there, and a third one right there. I think, yeah. Thank you. So, microphone down the front. Just wave so that. Good.
Thank you very much. My name is Lady van Koop. I'm from the Netherlands. I'm a researcher. I've just finished curriculum research. And the question was, is our curriculum fit for the future? And my question is, could you say a little bit more about how we can stimulate or foster that transition from learners as consumers to learners as co-creators of education? So not that they undergo education, but that they co-create education and become more creative instead of consumers.
Thank you. And just your colleague right next to you, just while we're there. Thank you. Yeah.
Sorry, I have a bit of a croaky voice. Principal Alador High School, so I am a practitioner. Thank you, Jill. I've been refreshed. You're the first person who's refreshed me to where we really are. The word trust, you said, and I look around the room and I see a lot of people who don't trust the internet. They don't use it and they don't engage with it with their students, and they tell me they couldn't be bothered with it. So I think what we all have to ask ourselves is, you actually have to trust the internet as a fantastic educational tool, and it depresses me when I hear a principal say that. And you also spoke about gaming. I get excited about the classes I walk into where they're using gaming, and and I don't know whether you didn't bring this out, but there is a sense of urgency that we have to get with the program. And I sit around here and I look at the audience and I think we all need a massive shake-up. So I think, so my question was, thank you for putting forward all the things that you put forward. But I think ICSEI has to look very hard at itself, I'm afraid, and that's what, so I really haven't got a question, but I just wanted to thank you for raising all those issues that you raised. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it's a brilliant comment that we all need a massive shake-up. So thank you for just lifting the temperature a little bit in the room, yeah? Okay, one more here. Thank you.
Yeah, Jill, I'm a practitioner, a school principal, and I just wonder if you could flesh out the concept of e-leadership a little bit more for us.
Yeah, thank you. Jill, have a go at that, and I'm going to hold you to no more than 3 or 4 minutes so I can do another round. Yep? Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Paul, in terms of the comment about gaming, and in recognition of the work that you were talking about. There is absolutely fantastic work. So when I said there's wonderful work going on around the globe, that's part of the area of what I mean in terms of simulation, and that work has a long history. In fact, at one stage of my life, I was a head of drama, I was involved in the simulation type work in a face-to-face environment, but certainly my co-editor of the British Journal of Educational Technology Special Edition, Professor Sara de Freitas, is one who, as you know probably, has been very much engaged in serious games work, and so the acknowledgement of that wonderful work in terms of virtual gaming environments and the ways in which leadership and other situations are being experimented with, if you like, certainly in terms of disaster situations, in terms of paramedic interventions, in terms of debates amongst legal practitioners, in terms of leadership development. Obviously there's a lot of work which is very expert, really excellent going on in those environments. But what I am saying is that there, I think, is not enough translation of this wonderful work to real schools, everyday environments. And we, although oddly enough in domestic situations there is, which is that, you know, we can go home tonight and maybe our kid is there actually engaging with a wonderful game which has got simulation facilities, but we're not engaging with it necessarily enough in the classroom every day in the way that we are domestically. And so I think there's a mismatch there, is what I'm saying. In terms of what you're saying around trust, the space of the ecological environment around us and the intelligence of crowdsourcing, crowdfunding, I absolutely recognize and celebrate the work that you and others are doing in that, and would endorse what you said. And Paul, I do hope that that agenda is taken forward and that we and others have a chance to discuss that. Thank you for that. From the Netherlands, Lenny, I think I got your name right, more or less. Is literature in terms of the transition from learners as consumers to learners as co-creators in terms of being proactive and creative in the classroom. I don't think it is, no, I don't think it's fit for purpose at all. And I think that is actually around the freedom, the power that teachers have to change that, and also that researchers have to work with that agenda. When I did my PhD at King's College in the 1990s in computers in education, that was actually part of the focus of my work, was how to enable learners to co-creators, to become producers themselves. It was actually part of the title of my PhD. Sorry, I think we're losing sound here. Thank you. Is that okay, the sound sort of speaker or not? So, Lenny, I welcome that question, and I do think it's actually really important that our students, our learners, our pupils at school do recognize that they are the producers in a new world. Because if there is a sense of being on the recipient end of a consumer type into technology, I think that that's very, very dangerous, in the sense that there is a sense of disempowerment of people not actually taking the agenda themselves. And I think the work of Albert Bandura in terms of self-efficacy in learning theory is very, very important here, which is if people feel they have self-efficacy, if people feel they can produce the game as well as to be a consumer of it, if they feel that actually in terms of the agenda is a shared one and making things together, making our world together, I think it makes education a wonderfully transformative experience, potentially. Is that better? Okay, thank you. Sorry about all that. I was struggling really hard and you were very patient. Thank you very much. I think there is a wonderful potential in terms of co-creation for learners to actually feel that they have, as I've just said, and for people who didn't hear what I said, I referred to the work of Albert Bandura, an American psychologist, in terms of learning theory, around people feeling that actually they have self-efficacy as a learner. Now, having that is actually the key for many people in terms of a transition into what is a transformational state of learning, whereby you have a joy that comes about in terms of how you are engaging with the world in a social constructivist sense. You feel that you are actually making your environment. It's very important. It's absolutely the key issue. And colleagues, I think that we need, therefore, thank you, Lena, for raising that, because it's a key thing in terms of e-leadership. We need to feel we are e-leaders. We know where this environment is going. Or if we don't know, and obviously we can't know because it's very uncertain, there is a sense that we are working together to enable young people to be helped. So possibly in a Vygotskian sense, we enable them from a mentoring and a coaching perspective to actually come to terms with this rapid development of technology. And in terms of humility, if we recognize that we just can't and don't know everything in this environment, and that's fine, because the world is so rapid, so complex, the information available is so manifold that nobody can know the full agenda. I think if we recognize that, that is part of the story. Thank you. Final comment.
Would you mind just holding on the final comment around saying more about e-leadership? Can I just get two other contributions?
Sure.
And then ask you to finish on that?
Yeah.
So I want to go to right at the back on this side, please. So can we get a microphone, wave your hand madly. Can you see that one? And then right there, Tony, wave your hand. Great. Right there, thank you. So I'll start here, and then I'm going to just add one part to that final question that has already been raised. Okay, thank you. Please just introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Udit Bhatta from Nepal. I'm principal in a green school there. So we are trying to work green education and environmental education that's an important focus to the young learners as well. When I heard your presentation, it was really fantastic. I think we should really look into this matter as well. It relates to the discussion that is going on in our school as well, whether or not to allow students to bring in iPads, to iPhones. We have a diverse community. There are some very students from rich families who can and who want to bring it, and there are poor students who cannot really bring it. You can clearly see the digital divide as well. More than a question or something really very clear or interesting, I think, there was a question when you showed us the data of what our mobile phones used for, and you showed the data as like games, 61% and others, and you asked a question, where is education? Well, I'm a little critical to that. I see some students in my school, especially who use mobiles and who want to use iPad, and who use lots of cameras and other things, and say, I want to be apps developer, I want to be a games developer. So I think there is also education that when they use it, they also sometimes, some of them, or many of them, might be interested in taking career in application development or games development, or for example, when we have a data that 21% of people who use mobile use to watch video, then I think we should also look into what the contents are in video. In YouTube, for example, there are many inspirational videos, there are many videos about different countries, different culture. There are so many animated movies that really helps in teaching science, for example. So in our school, we have been using that. So I think we should be more focused also in the content that is being used and follow that trend, what is going on.
Thank you. I might just need you to come. Thank you very much. Perfect. Can I go to Tony Townsend?
Hi, Tony Townsend. I'm Australian. I'd just like to bring together four concepts that have been mentioned and perhaps to see whether or not you can have a comment on them. The four concepts I want to use are the digital technology, the accountability system, trust, and fourth one is equity. And I think all of these are really, really strongly connected. I think the digital technology has allowed people to take charge for themselves of their own education. And what this has created is a lack of control by governments. And so governments have instituted accountability. And it's interesting that accountability has come into the system at the same time as digital technology has got better. The more digital technology we have available, the more accountability we seem to have. And I think this is governments trying to control people because they don't trust the general population of their countries to enable them to choose their own educational system through the digital technology that's now available. And this, of course, has created additional inequity across the world because we have some places that now have iPhone 5 and iPad 3 and iPad Air and this, that and everything else. And we have other places in the world that still can't access any form of digital technology. So where is the responsibility on some parts of the world that are really well developed in terms of digital technologies, supporting other parts of the world that don't, in order to lessen the inequalities that we have, not within countries, but across countries quite substantially.
Thank you. Okay, Jill, and just as you make your final comments, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to come to Jill now, but you've got 3 or 4 minutes only. Can I return to perhaps whatever PS you can add around encouraging the embrace of e-leadership, and go back to Paul's question about your final part of your presentation was to develop an e-leadership framework, and is that really necessary? I think is an interesting challenge. So you've got 3 minutes to try and tackle all of that.
That's very difficult, thank you. If this microphone plays up, then I'll move again, otherwise let's trust us. How's that? So in terms of comment about don't trust the internet, for some teachers don't use it or engage enough, I think that is very important to recognise that it is a fantastic tool, and in terms of the urgency of getting with the programme, in terms of the matters of shake-up, I think, there's a recognition here. And, we're not at fault in any specific way really here necessarily. I just think it is something that has developed in unpredictable ways, disruptive technologies, as they say. So in terms of the fact that we have been shaken up by this, I think is something that actually, I think we need to take your point that there is an opportunity here which is fantastic and to work with it. Thank you. In terms of comments from a school principal, thank you very much, around the leadership of that in terms of bringing in iPads and looking at a career in apps development, for example. The inspirational videos on YouTube and the pedagogic usage of ICT, which in many cases has been very well researched and described in a range of areas. But what I'm saying is needs to be taken wider still, not just at the pedagogic level. There's been a tendency for learning technologies debates to be there's nothing too much focused on pedagogy, of course it's very important, but I just think there's a need for all areas of the school to actually come into e-leadership, not just at the classroom level. But that work that's being done is really good practice, and thank you so much for raising that to use and follow that. In terms of Tony's kind of bringing together of ideas, thank you. That's very interesting and very important around taking charge of sharing, really, supporting other countries in terms of digital divide, in terms of the kind of environment we have in the population and the digital inequity that we see. I think the attempt to control by government is observed. And I think really we do need to, together, to actually look to try to see if we can encourage and embrace an e-leadership framework. I do actually think, Tony, that it is important. I mean, I'm not, I don't necessarily think that we have to have frameworks if we feel we don't need them, but what I'm saying is I have perceived from a number of responses, not only here but elsewhere, an urgency and a crisis and a difficulty around this agenda. And I think from that point of view, it does need to be more obvious. It does need to be something that we work together on. And taking back to Paul's point and developing the notion that actually the expertise, the brilliance that we have observed in terms of commercial work on gaming, for example, fantastic work. We need to learn from that in terms of how education can be involved, can work on the very best for our students. Finally, I wanted to say, in recognition of ICSEI's most important work on improving school effectiveness and working together to make things better for young people, I think it is actually essential that we do. Because to take the point that was made around empowerment, it's essential that we enable students to feel that they can work with the technology themselves, to be producers, not just to be consumers. That's the point. That is the difference. We are brilliant consumers at home in some cases, playing with games and stuff. They are fantastic products. The minority of the elite population who are technically gifted and superior in technological skills, who can develop those resources, they are very talented, and that's wonderful. But I'm looking at talent across all of our children, across all of our schools, in all of the countries of the world, enabling the best that they can be.
Jill, you started this morning's session by thanking people for coming on a Sunday morning early. We want to finish this session by thanking you for what has been a truly inspirational and I have to say motivational keynote. Thank you very much indeed.